Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be talking about freshwater crocodiles.
Yeah, pretty cool creatures, actually.
Yeah, I think so too. Now, I've been reading this fascinating text, originally in Chinese, and it really digs into the evolution of these animals.
It's an incredible story.
It is. Like, how did freshwater crocs survive when the dinosaurs couldn't? What's the secret to their success?
Right. They've been around for millions of years,
Way longer than us, that's for sure.
longer than a lot of things. The text actually takes us all the way back to the late Triassic period, about 200 million years ago.
Wow. 200 million years.
It introduces us to a creature called Carnifex carolinensis.
Carnifex.
Carnifex,
Oh.
yeah, about 2.5 meters long.
Whoa, that's a big croc.
It was, and get this, it lived in North America.
No kidding. North America.
Yeah, back when dinosaurs like Dilophosaurus were just starting to appear.
So Carnifex was hanging out with dinosaurs.
Side by side.
Yeah.
And it already had all these adaptations for life in freshwater.
I mean, that's fascinating. To think that they were already so well adapted way back then.
It really is. You know, Carnifex belonged to a group called Sphenosutians, and many scientists believe that this group actually contains the ancestors of all modern crocodilians.
Hold on, so you're telling me that this Carnifex could be like the great-great-great-grandparent of all the crocodiles we see today?
It's a pretty mind-blowing idea. Right?
Totally. But even though Carnifex was well suited for freshwater life, it wasn't exactly at the top of the food chain back then, right?
Exactly. It was a time of fierce competition.
So who are they up against? Who are the rivals?
Well, for one, there were these creatures called phytosaurs.
Dinosaurs, those are.
Now they looked a lot like crocodiles.
Really?
But, fun fact, they weren't actually closely related at all.
What? So imposter crocs?
Exactly. It's a classic case of convergent evolution, where unrelated species evolve similar features because they're adapting to similar environments.
So basically they were like, hey, that crocodile look is working, we should try that.
Something like that. And on top of that, you had large amphibians also competing for the same resources.
Amphibians too.
Yeah, it was a wild time.
It sounds pretty intense. A real battle for survival.
It was. It's amazing that the freshwater crocodiles managed to make it through all that.
Yeah, how did they do it? Were they just tougher than everyone else?
Well, they were definitely adaptable.
Right, adapting to survive.
They found their niche and really started to diversify.
I'm guessing some of that crocodile tech we talked about earlier came into play.
You got it. One of the most important adaptations was the development of a bony secondary palate.
Okay, bony secondary palate. Sounds complicated.
It sounds technical, but it's actually pretty straightforward. Imagine trying to eat underwater without being able to breathe.
Yeah, not ideal.
Right. This bony secondary palate basically separated their nasal passages from their mouth.
So they could breathe and eat at the same time.
Exactly. No more choking on their dinner.
Smart move. I bet that gave them a huge advantage.
Oh, absolutely. And we see this theme of adaptation repeating itself in other features, too. For instance, unlike their land-dwelling ancestors, freshwater crocodiles started to evolve shorter limbs and longer tails.
Okay, so less about walking on land and more about swimming like a champ.
Exactly. They were becoming masters of their watery domain.
Streamlining for speed. It makes me wonder, what did those early crocodiles look like as they transitioned?
Probably pretty awkward, I'd imagine.
Like a teenager going through a growth spurt. Speaking of early crocs, our source mentioned some cool examples like the 3 Sphenosutius species found in China.
Oh yeah, Sphenosutius is fascinating.
Tell me more. What's the deal with those guys?
Well, they lived during the Jurassic period and were found in a variety of different environments across China, showing how these early crocodiles were really starting to spread out and diversify.
So they were exploring new territories.
Exactly. They were adapting to different ecological niches and really making their mark on the world.
It seems like they were hitting their stride.
They were. But as we move into the Jurassic and Cretaceous periods, things get a little more complicated.
Complicated. How so?
Well, our source describes it as a crocodile family drama with different lineages vying for dominance. And that's when we meet the Thalattosuchians, the marine crocodiles.
Ooh, marine crocs. I'm intrigued.
They were a force to be reckoned with, but we'll have to save that story for after the break.
All right, so before the break, we were talking about these marine crocodiles, the Thalattosuchians.
Yeah, the ocean-going crocs. They sound pretty impressive.
Oh, they were. They had all these amazing adaptations for life in the open ocean.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Well, many of them had sleek, streamlined bodies, paddle-like limbs,
Okay, it's starting to get the picture.
and some even had fluked tails. similar to what we see in whales today.
Fluke tails.
Yeah.
Whoa, now that's commitment to the ocean life.
Right, they were built for speed and agility in the water.
So they were out there conquering the oceans, but what about their freshwater cousins? Were they just kind of hanging back, watching the show? Not at all. The freshwater crocodiles were still evolving and diversifying in their own right.
Doing their own thing.
Exactly. Remember, those freshwater ecosystems were still teeming with life, plenty of opportunities.
So they had their own stage to shine on.
Exactly. Our source actually mentions a really cool example, Chalawan from Thailand.
Chalawand. Okay, what's the story there?
Well, Chalawan was a massive freshwater crocodile that lived during the late Jurassic, early Cretaceous.
Okay, massive. How massive are we talking?
Get this, it reached lengths of 7-8 meters.
7-8 meters. That's like the size of a small bus.
It puts things into perspective, doesn't it?
It definitely does. So even though they weren't as widespread as their marine relatives, these freshwater crocs were still experimenting with size.
Oh, absolutely. And they were diversifying in other ways, too. For example, there's Stomatosuchus from North Africa.
Stomatosuchus, another big one.
It was large, yes, but here's the kicker. It was likely a filter feeder.
Wait, a filter-feeding crocodile.
You heard that right. It's kind of like the prehistoric equivalent of a baleen whale.
That is wild. So they weren't just limited to hunting big prey.
Nope. They were finding all sorts of creative ways to take advantage of their environment.
That's amazing. I love how diverse they were. But all this diversity, all this evolution, it was about to face a major test.
Oh, yeah. You're talking about the big one.
The KPG extinction. The asteroid, the dinosaurs, the whole shebang.
That's the one. A real game changer for life on Earth.
So did our freshwater crocodiles survive? I mean, we're talking about them today, so I'm guessing they did, but how?
You're right, they did survive. While so many other creatures, including the non-avian dinosaurs, perished during the KPG extinction, freshwater crocodiles somehow managed to pull through.
It's incredible. They're like the ultimate survivors.
They are, and a lot of it comes back to those key adaptations we talked about earlier. Things like that bony secondary palate, their powerful tails for swimming, their low metabolic rates.
It's like those adaptations that helped them thrive in freshwater environments also happened to be beneficial when the world went haywire.
Exactly. It's a testament to the power of adaptation.
Survival of the fittest, right?
You could say that. But even though they survived the extinction event, the world they entered was still a challenging place.
So the challenges weren't over.
Not by a long shot. The ecosystems were in a state of flux and new competitors were emerging.
Like who? Who were they up against this time?
Well, for starters, the Cenozoic era, the era after the dinosaurs, saw the rise of some truly gigantic turtles.
Giant turtles. Okay, I'm all ears.
I'm talking about turtles like Stupendomes, which could reach the size of a small car.
Wow, a turtle the size of a car. I'm picturing some epic battles between those giants and our freshwater crocs.
It would have been a sight to see. And it wasn't just turtles. Early whales, like Cimacedus, were also starting to explore freshwater environments.
So they went from giant turtles to ancient whales. Sounds like they couldn't catch a break.
It was a tough time. But our freshwater crocodiles, they were resilient.
They had millions of years of evolution on their side.
Exactly. They were well equipped to face these new challenges.
So they still had those key adaptations. The bony palate, the tails, the low metabolism, it all helped them.
It did. And they were continuing to evolve and diversify, adapting to the specific challenges of their environments. Some lineages even continued to thrive in marine environments.
So the legacy of those ocean-going crocs lived on.
It did. And here's something to think about. All the surviving lineages of crocodilians that we see today, the alligatoroids, crocodiloids, and gabuloids, they all descended from those resilient freshwater ancestors.
So all the crocodiles we see today, they owe their existence to those tough freshwater crocs that made it through the extinction.
It's an incredible legacy.
We've been talking about all these amazing adaptations and how freshwater crocodiles managed to survive so many challenges over millions of years, but it makes you wonder, how are they doing today?
That's a great question, and unfortunately the answer is not as well as they used to be.
Really? So what's changed?
Well, we're living in the Anthropocene, the age of humans, and that's having a huge impact on pretty much every ecosystem on Earth.
Including freshwater habitat?
Exactly. And freshwater crocodiles are definitely feeling the pressure. One of the biggest issues they're facing is habitat loss.
So basically we're taking away their homes.
You got it. As we continue to expand our cities, our agriculture, our infrastructure, we're encroaching on the wetlands, rivers, and lakes that these animals need to survive.
It's like we're squeezing them out.
Yeah, and when you fragment their habitats, it makes those populations much more vulnerable to other threats.
Right. It's like a domino effect.
And then on top of habitat loss, there's climate change.
Yeah, that's a big one.
It really is. Rising temperatures, altered rainfall patterns, more extreme weather events. All of this disrupts the delicate balance of freshwater ecosystems.
I remember how we talked about those low metabolic rates being so beneficial for survival.
Yeah,
Well, I'm guessing that also makes them pretty sensitive to changes in temperature.
you're absolutely right. What was once an advantage is now becoming a liability in this rapidly changing world.
That's almost ironic, isn't it?
It is. And then, of course, there's pollution to worry about, too.
Oh yeah, we can't forget about that.
Runoff from agriculture, industrial waste, plastic debris, all of that ends up in the water, contaminating it, and harming not only the crocodiles themselves, but also the entire food web they rely on.
So habitat loss, climate change, pollution. It sounds like a perfect storm of problems.
It is. And that's not even mentioning the direct conflict with humans in some areas.
Right? I imagine that still happens.
It does. In some places, crocodiles are still hunted for their meat or their skins.
Or because they're seen as a threat to people or livestock.
Exactly. It's a complex issue, but unfortunately, those conflicts often end badly for the crocodiles.
It's sad to think that these animals who have survived so much throughout history are now facing such an uncertain future largely because of us.
It is, but the good news is it's not all doom and gloom. There are people out there who are working hard to protect these incredible animals.
So there's hope.
There's always hope. There are lots of organizations and researchers who are dedicated to conserving freshwater crocodiles.
So what are they doing? What can they do?
Well, they're doing a lot of different things. They're working to protect critical habitats, promote sustainable fishing practices, reduce pollution, and educate local communities about the importance of coexisting with crocodiles.
So it's a multifaceted approach.
It is. It takes a lot of effort from a lot of different people, but it's definitely making a difference.
That's great to hear. But what about us? What can regular people do to help?
Well, for one, you can spread the word.
Tell people about the challenges crocodiles are facing.
Exactly. The more people know, the more likely they are to care and want to help. You can also support organizations that are doing good work in this area.
Right. Donate, volunteer, spread awareness.
Exactly. And even small things like making conscious choices to reduce your own environmental footprint can make a difference.
Every little bit helps, right?
Absolutely. And sometimes just taking the time to appreciate these animals, to learn about them, to understand their importance, that's a big step too.
It all comes back to awareness and respect.
It does. These are incredible creatures with an incredible story. They're a living link to the age of dinosaurs.
They deserve our admiration.
They do.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive into the world of freshwater crocodiles.
It has.
We've learned so much about their evolution, their adaptations, the challenges they've overcome, and the ones they continue to face today. It's a story of resilience, adaptability, and the enduring power of life. And it's a story that's still being written.
It is.
So, to all our listeners out there, next time you see a crocodile, remember everything we've talked about today. Remember their ancient lineage, their unique adaptations, and the importance of protecting them for future generations.
It's a message worth sharing.
It is. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.